Day 5 of dividing decimals, we will be looking at dividing by 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. So our expectation for this lesson is to divide decimals by 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 using mental math strategies. So before we go into our lesson, we need to know our success criteria when we are dividing by these numbers. So for number 1, I know that dividing by 10, 100, and 1,000 and 10,000 is related to multiplying by 0.1, 0.01, and 0.001, and 0.0001. So that's what we talked about when we were multiplying decimals, is that it's just like dividing by 10, 100, and 1,000. Number 2, I appropriately use place values as an aid to mentally divide by 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. I move the decimal depending on the place value of the decimal and the number it is being divided by. So when we're talking about dividing, we're moving the decimal place to the left. Unlike multiplying, when we moved the decimal place to the right. So let's look at our first problem. Solve the following problem. A hotel is planning an expansion. A scale model of the new wing is on display in the lobby. A sign states that the scale is 1 to 100. This means that 1 unit of size of the model represents 100 units of size of the actual building. How did the designers of the model determine the dimensions? So let's look at this. We could say that the designers knew the dimensions of the real building and divided these by 100. So they must have known the height, length, and width and divided these measurements by 100 to make the model. But how could we figure out these dimensions? So if the scale is 1 to 100, as seen here, and the dimensions of the building are in, let's say, meters, then you could use the same numbers to make the same model, but in centimeters. Because there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. And then proving our scale to be 1 to 100. Now let's determine a height of a different model. So the next problem that we're going to work through together is James wants to create a model of the CN Tower that is 1,000 times smaller than the actual tower that stands 553 meters tall. What should be the height of the model? So what is our responsibility then to figure out what is the question asking us? So the question is asking us what should be the height of the model. Well, we know that the building itself is 553 meters tall, but James wants to build a model that is 1,000 times smaller. So what is the equation that we have to turn this problem into? The equation then would be, what is 553 divided by 1,000? So instead of doing long division, we know that with 1,000, whenever we have tens, hundreds, 1,000s, or 10,000s, we're actually just moving the decimal. So that makes it easy. So with a number of 553 that doesn't give you a decimal, the decimal is always at the very end. Okay, so we're just going to place a decimal here. So if we're dividing by 1,000, how many times are we moving the decimal? If you said 3, you are correct because we have 3 zeros. We have 3 zeros in the 1,000, right? So we have 1 here, 2, and 3. So if we're moving our decimal to the left, because before, from our last unit, we realized that when we multiply, we are multiplying by 10, 100, 1,000, or 10,000, we're moving the decimal to the right. So you can remember to move to the left from the division because we're making the numbers smaller, like we normally do when we divide. So with 553, if we're moving our decimal 3 times to the left, that means that we move this decimal 1, 2, and 3. So our decimal should be right in front of the first 5. So 0.553 meters is our answer. So the model needs to be 0.553 0.553 meters. But we did not answer our question fully. So let's make a sentence that fully answers the problem. And there we go. The height of the model should be 0.553 meters. So we got that answer by just moving the decimal space 3 times because we were dividing it by 1,000. Okay, let's look at our next question right here, 12.5 divided by 10. So what do we do with division when we're dividing it by 10? We know that we have to move the decimal space depending on how many zeros we have. So we know that we have 1 0 right here, and our decimal place is between the 2 and the 5. And when we're dividing, we move the decimal place to the left. So we are simply going to move the decimal place right here. So our answer would be 1.25. So our answer is 1.25 because we move the decimal 1 spot to the left because we were dividing it by 10. Now our next question is 77 divided by 1,000. So we are looking at this number here and where the decimal place has to go here. And like I said before, when we aren't given a decimal place, so you can't see it, it means it's a whole number. So our decimal place is at the very end. So our decimal place, we can just place it right here. And because we have 3 zeros, we'll be moving it, the decimal spot, 3 places to the left. So our decimal place will be going 1, 2, and 3. So let's write that out because it's kind of confusing because there are no numbers where we're pointing. So 77, our decimal is here. So we're moving it 1, 2, 3, and our decimal's here. So we don't have enough numbers, so we put our 0 in that space and add a 0 there. So our answer is 0.077. So we move the decimal 3 times because we have 3 zeros, because we're dividing it by 1,000. So our next question, 103.5 divided by 10. We know our decimal place is between the 3 and the 5, but we're dividing it by 10, meaning that we have to move the decimal place once because we have 1 0. So our decimal place will be moved right in between the 0 and the 3. So our answer is 10.35. Now I would like you guys to please complete the following questions for the next class. I'll be checking to make sure that you completed these questions. They won't take you too long, probably just about 5 minutes at most. So A, what is 960 divided by 10,000? B, 2.8 divided by 100? And C, 10,000 divided by 3,210. So make sure you get these questions done. I'll be checking tomorrow, and I'll also be meeting with each one of you individually to make sure that you are understanding the unit so far.